Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to Marin Fire History. This is retired Fire Chief Paul Smith, and today we have an exciting topic for us today. It's Sanborn maps and how they affected the insurance business and how the fire agencies used them back in the day. They're a little archaic, but it's part of our Marin County fire history. And with me today is retired San Rafael Fire Chief Bob Marcucci. Good morning, Chief. How are you?
Fine. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I understand you are involved with getting some Sanborn maps yourself in your own collection, and I was fascinated to hear that, and you shared some of those for our topic today. Can you tell us a little bit, maybe start this out and tell us a little about the history of the Sanborn maps and how they came to be?
Sure. Sanborn maps really started in London, where insurance brokers needed to know more information about the buildings they were insuring. Came to the United States, and Daniel Sanborn, a civil engineer, was asked to map two cities in Tennessee. At the same time, he was mapping Boston. And the reason that the insurance industry wanted these maps is that they were unaware of the hazard or the liability or the risks that they were insuring. They needed more information. And so the mappings helped the insurance industry not only look at the buildings that they were insuring, but look at the surrounding buildings to determine if it was viable for them to insure a building when there were hazards around them. And so Sanborn maps became the standard for most insurance companies in setting up a proposal to a building owner.
Oh, nice. And with us today, we'll show a slide of what San Rafael looked like in 1887. Now that's before we were around, but Sanborn, like you said, Chief, was here, and they did a drawing of San Rafael. The first one I think I saw was 1887. Now, if we take a look at this, what fascinates Paul, what fascinates me is I love the calligraphy and the artwork and the design. These truly were works of art. These were not the Thomas brothers that, I grew up with.
Well, Thomas Brothers, Sanborn maps started in 1866. And they were done by surveyors who went out into the field. They were basically black and white lithographs. And then when somebody needed one or ordered one, then they were colored based on a legend that Sanborn developed.
So you could tell, the insurance adjuster, the insurance agent could tell the construction of the building, the setbacks of the building, and that just because of the different colors Sanborn used then.
The insurance people could look at the map. They could see that yellow was a wood frame building. Red, if the building was colored red, was a brick building. Gray was metal. Blue was adobe or stone. So they could look at that. Also, they could look at the height of the building, where the openings were in windows and fire doors. Was there a fire alarm system, a sprinkler system? What was the size of the water main? Where were fire alarm boxes? And what were the surrounding buildings? Were they all wood frame, and you're going to insure another wood frame building? Is that a wise decision? But they wouldn't have known that unless they had a 10,000 foot view of the surrounding areas and the type of buildings that were there and the building that they were insuring.
That's to me, this is fascinating because somebody in New York or Boston is looking at a map of, say, San Rafael, and they can tell the lay of the land and the building construction. And basically, it's an early system of their risk analysis, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's what it's all about is insurance companies were losing a lot of money in the 1800s for large fires, many of them because they didn't know what they were really insuring.
Sure.
This way, they knew what they were insuring, and they knew they could put together a proposal that made good sense to the building owner.
Sure. And let's take a look at our next slide, and we'll see how Sanborn captured San Rafael in two periods here. The first one we've been looking at for the last few minutes was 1887. Now, 7 years later, they did another one in 1894. And studying these maps, that was just a 7 year period, Bob, but you could see in the late 1800s how San Rafael just grew. The boundaries grew, and the number of structures grew. With a lot more structures, a lot more streets. And for a couple of folks that are interested in history, it really tells the story how a town grew up, doesn't it?
Well, it also tells how the town grew up, but it also tells us how the fire department grew, because as the buildings became more dense, became larger, expanded out, hose carts weren't going to do the trick anymore. They needed mobilized apparatus. And so Santa Fe's case, in about the 1920s, they started to have motorized apparatus based on, I think, probably taking a good look at Sanborn maps and seeing how the city was expanding, type of building construction taking place, and that the equipment that they had wasn't going to do the job.
Sure. Sure, that makes sense. So not only did it help the fire department, it basically helped the insurance company and their risk. And as the fire department grew, their need for equipment, staffing, manpower, and stations grew too. Because isn't it true, back in 1900, Santa Fe had one fire station downtown?
Yeah, had one station downtown until about 1958, which was where station number 52 is today. And the reason that station is there is because the train went through town. They wanted to make sure that they had the fire engine on each side of the tracks. So another use for Sanborn maps that I used when I first found them is pre-fire planning, knowing what buildings are downtown, what the construction was, and how best to maybe suppress fires in some of those buildings.
Sure. And why don't we go to the old county courthouse slide? And that's a picture that's a map that you shared with us. And the county courthouse is no longer in downtown Santa Fe, but back when the map was drawn, the detail, to me, again, for a building like you mentioned, the detail's amazing. Here, the county courthouse they noted that it has a watchman on duty 24 hours a day, and it had a jail cell in the basement, and it talks about where the storage was. So you're absolutely right. For the fire department to pre-fire plan, this was a very early a tool for them to use.
One of the things that's not mentioned in the Sanborn map is the location of the gallows where they used to hang people in the early days. When this building burnt in about, I forget what year it was, I think about in the late 1900s or 1970s.
Yep.
The map is red, which says it's brick, but inside was all wood frame.
Sure.
The outside was exactly as the Sanborn map indicated, but the inside, based on most buildings of that time, were all heavy wood frame structure.
Yep. And the very front of the courthouse is a little little rectangle, and that would usually indicate a wooden porch or a portico, something like that.
Correct.
Well, we'll take another look back in to another map we found about Sausalito, and that's on our next slide. And the Sausalito map was published in 1884, and the Sausalito Fire Department was formed just the year before, but the engineer's stamp on this particular map I found fascinating because it says there's a population of 1,200 people in Sausalito. Well, I hate to tell you, on a nice day, there's 1,200 bicycles going down Bridgeway. So the area sure has changed. But I'll tell you, this engineer stamp doesn't mention a fire department or hose carts or anything because Sausalito's was still basically a bucket brigade and a fire watch. And the year after this map was published was when Sausalito bought their first hose cart. So for fire history guys, this is to me, it look back on this and see what was. It just tells the story of Sausalito a little bit and fascinating to me.
What's interesting about the certificate, it's Sanborn Purist
Right.
Mapping Company. In 1899, Sanborn acquired the Purist Mapping Company, and they changed the name to Sanborn Purist Mapping Company. In 1902, they did away with the Purist and they went back to Sanborn Mapping Company. So that certificate is one of a few around because the Purist only was on certificate for a couple of years. So whoever has that certificate has a jewel in my mind.
Yeah, that's a rare piece of history. And we'll take a look in the next slide. Going back to there again, our county and the way things were. I believe this was 1928, and it shows in the blue square in the middle is the Kentfield Fire Station with the Sir Francis Drake Boulevard shown. And I got a little blue arrow here that used to be called Sir Francis Drake before it was Sir Francis Drake was the Red Hill Ross Landing Road. And it's these changes that we see in our history through time that are captured in some of these maps. And there again is a nice look back on where things were and before our time.
If you look at the old maps, Sanborn maps of Fairfax, Sir Francis Drake was called Olima Road. So it changed from the Red Hill to Olima Road, then the Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. So Sanborn maps, as you said, Paul, have tremendous history.
Sure.
In fact, many times as fire chief, people would come in, say, we're going to demolish this building. We know it's not the original building. What was there originally? And what do we have to be worried about? Underground storage tanks or whatever. So architects cherish, I think, Sanborn maps because of the history that they have.
And you just mentioned how things were and what was there before. So let's take a look at the next slide and we'll show a picture that you shared with us. This is downtown San Anselmo. And the colored buildings, the blues and the pinks, are right along San Anselmo Avenue. And that as we go to the left side of the map, there are the more yellow squares and depicting more wood frame residential type structures. But this will give you a good look at downtown San Anselmo and the variety of structures, mercantile, residential, and the building construction types. So like you said before, what was there before? What was there when somebody wants to take a building down? And absolutely right, you can look back into the 1920s and see what was on that lot in San Anselmo Avenue.
If you look at probably San Anselmo today and look at those buildings on the Sanborn map, many of them still exist. So it says if we have a fire, can the fire extend from one building to the other? Red is brick, blue is adobe. So it gives you a pretty good indication of the construction at that time. It still exists to this day.
Sure. And a lot of our old downtowns have a number of older buildings. So it's interesting to look back. And Bob, I really appreciate you helping us out today and sharing what you know and sharing your Sanborn maps with us. I would like to thank our viewers for tuning in. And again, we hope to see you down the road, and stay safe. Thanks for joining us today.